Your tax matters.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to our tax information webinar, proudly hosted during the Disability Rights Awareness Month. My name is Johan Potgieter, and it is my privilege to serve as your program director for today's session. I'm here representing the Gender Equality and Persons with Disability Unit within SARS. Before I start, I would like to extend a special welcome to our delegated representatives, as well as our sign language interpreters who have joined us online. It is a great honor for me to facilitate this very important discussion this morning. Our aim is to provide you with clarity and insight on tax matters relating to persons with disabilities. Before I start with the official presentation, there are just a few rules that I would like to quickly touch on. At the conclusion of our webinar, you will be prompted to complete a brief survey. Please do that, complete the survey. It helps us as a team as we continue with these sessions to provide detailed information and to make sure that what we present is up to par. Second thing, please submit all your questions via the chat bot, right? There is one very important item that I would also like to touch on, and that is when you ask your questions, please bear in mind that we are linked to the POPI Act. So that means that we would not like you to include any personal information with regards to the questions that you post, right? Joining us, for those of you that are joining us on the YouTube live stream, please note that the question and answers function will only be available to those participants who have registered on the platform, right? We will endeavor today to answer as many of your questions as possible. Some will be addressed during the Q&A sessions, right? Others will be answered via the chatbot. Please also bear in mind that we have provided you with a special email address from where you will be able to, in writing then, also post questions. That email box, to my understanding, will be open for about a period of 2 days, where our team will then obviously route your questions to our specific subject matter experts. Right. Lastly, should you experience any problems with regards to the recordings or your web link, please be reminded that the entire session will be available on the SARS website, on the YouTube link as is. Ladies and gentlemen, our program today has been divided into 2 parts. Firstly, we are going to look at a presentation that will be presented to us by our subject matter specialists. Secondly, thereafter, we are immediately going to drop into a live Q&A session where we will be answering some of the questions that you have posted. To officially commence our program, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our first speaker, who will be Mrs. Mandisa Mbekeni, with a welcome note. May we please have her biography on the screen? Thank you very much. Ms. Mbekeni is an accomplished legal professional with nearly 30 years of extensive experience in law and business ethics. Her distinguished career began at Webber Wentzel and includes senior leadership roles at the Independent Electoral Commission, Investec Bank, Transnet, Rand Water, and NEPAD Business Foundation. A committed advocate for social justice, her impressive governance experience includes broad positioning at African Life, Smollen, and the Black Management Forum. She chaired the inaugural board of South African Women in Mining and served as chairperson on the Bytes Insurance South Africa. Mandisa is currently a member of the Harvard Business Review Advisory Council and leads the Gender Equality and Persons with Disability Unit here in SARS, where she is continuing to mentor and coach the next generation of professionals. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome me Let us please welcome Andisa to the podium. Thank you.
Program Director, leaders from the Presidency, SARS leadership here, in person and online, leadership of the South African Disability Alliance, Down Syndrome South Africa, leaders of the disability sector, leaders of government departments and state entities, leaders of labor partners, leaders of NPOs and NGOs, disability sector members, parents, families, esteemed colleagues, good morning. On behalf of SARS, welcome to today's webinar on tax deductions and completing the ITRDD form. We value this engagement with the disability sector, especially, as I mentioned before, Down Syndrome South Africa and the South African Disability Alliance, with whom in partnership we conceived this webinar. As Nelly Barrow reminds us, diversity is a fact, but inclusion is a choice we make every day. As leaders, we have to put our message through that we embrace and not just tolerate diversity. Today's session is part of that commitment, ensuring our service is accessible and respectful to all. Our aim is to clear and to provide information so everyone can claim the correct deductions with confidence and complete the ITRDD form accurately and on time. Our procurement team is also here to provide a broad overview of the SARS procurement process. Both tax compliance and inclusive procurement are key ingredients of an inclusive economy. Please engage actively, use the Q&A, share real-world scenarios, and tell us where more clarity is needed. Your feedback helps us improve the information we provide, our systems, as well as our service. Thank you for prioritizing accurate reporting and compliance. We take it that is the reason you have joined us. Together, and by choosing inclusion every day, we can make filing smoother, faster, and more reliable for everyone. With that, let's begin. Program Director, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKinney, for that wonderful and insightful welcome address. Ladies and gentlemen, this information session that we are sharing this morning is designed, and we are going to be looking at some key areas. Firstly, how persons with disability, parents, and caregivers can complete their tax forms for rebates. Secondly, guidance on what may be included, for example, medical claims with regards to disability-related tax rebates. And then lastly, to provide clarification, as Mandisa has already mentioned. Clarification leads to compliance, and it allows us to have common queries that we're looking at and challenges that we are going to clarify. A quick reminder, for those of you that have joined us online and that have registered, please remember to use the chatbot to ask your questions within the chatbot. Our next presenter will be Mr. Koenraad Burger. Sorry, Mr. Koenraad Burger, may I please have his bio on the screen? Thank you very much. Let's see. Mr. Koenraad Burger is a legal specialist in the centralized litigation units within SARS. He has, with over 30 years of tax law experience within the South African Revenue Services. He holds a bachelor's degree in law from the University of Northwest. As a person with a disability, Kunrad has a personal as well as a professional involvement with regards to tax relief since the year 2005, when he conducted a pivotal legal comparative study on tax relief for medical and disability expenses across various countries. His work directly led to the amendments in legislation, the creation of and the confirming of diagnosis of a disability form, as well as the list that allows disability expenses, which he continues to help and update. Kunrad, I'm handing over to you.
Oh, I was on mute. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Program Director, for allowing me to speak today. I'm going to talk about the medical tax credit and claiming disability expenses. Now, the first question that we need to ask ourselves is, what is a disability for tax purposes? Now, it is a disability is defined in section 6 capital B subsection 1, and it means a moderate to severe limitation of any person's ability to function or to perform daily activities as a result of a physical, sensory, communication, intellectual, or mental impairment. If the limitation has lasted or has the prognosis of lasting more than a year and is diagnosed by a duly registered medical practitioner in accordance with the criteria prescribed by the Commissioner. Okay, now before the psychiatric disability community jumps up and down, maybe I should just explain why we used the word mental. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we all are aware or should be aware of the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. And in the UN Convention, they talk about mental disability or mental impairment. And when we wrote the definition for the purposes of the South African law, we decided to dovetail the definition of disability in the UN Convention. Now, if there's a disability, then the expense must stem from the disability. If the expense must stem from the disability of either the taxpayer or the taxpayer's dependent. Dependents who are neither a spouse nor a child do not qualify for the additional medical expenses tax credit, and in the additional medical expenses tax credit, the disability expenses are included. If you are a person with disability and below the age of 65, then you are allowed to claim 33 1/3% of your eligible medical and disability expenses. that you have incurred and paid during a year of assessment. Very importantly, ladies and gentlemen, you can only claim those expenses that you have paid, that you have incurred and paid during a year of assessment. Now, the second definition that we need to look at, who is a dependent? A dependent is a spouse, a person's child, and the child of the spouse. Any member of the person's family in respect of whom he or she is liable for family care and support. Okay, let me give you an example. If I've got a child with a mental impairment and that child is not working and that child is not liable for income tax, and I support and care for that child, then that child is a dependent. Any person who is recognized as a dependent of the person in terms of the rules of the medical scheme. Who is a spouse? A spouse is a person who is married, who is married or in a customary union recognized by the South African law. A union recognized as a marriage in accordance with the tenets of a religion. A same-sex or heterosexual union which the commissioner is satisfied intended to be permanent. That is for your people who live together as husband and wife, just by way of an example. Who is a child? A child is a person or a child of the spouse who was alive during the portion of a year of assessment and who is unmarried. Now, ladies and gentlemen, just to clarify, a year of assessment runs from the 1st of March of a current year until the last day of February of the following year. So the 2026 year of assessment commenced on the 1st of March 2026 and it will end on the last day of February, I think it's 28 February 2026. So it's the first day of February 2025, last day of February 2026. That is a year of assessment. Okay? If the child is under the age of 18, if the child is over the age of 18 but under the age of 21, if the child is over 21 but who is wholly or partially dependent on the maintenance of the person and has not become liable for income tax in its own right. Now, what is excluded from the definition of a child? A foster child, a child who is not legally adopted, and a child that is only under your custodianship do not qualify as a child for tax purposes. Now, A physical impairment has been interpreted as a disability that is less restraining than a disability as defined. This means that the restriction on the person's ability to function or to perform daily activities is mild. If we quickly go back to the definition of disability, it means a moderate to severe limitation. Okay. So it is a moderate to severe impairment. Okay. Here we have a physical impairment. It is when it is mild. So there is that clear distinction. The distinction, the physical impairment must be moderate to severe to qualify as a disability. If the impairment is mild, then it is not a disability. Now, what is the tax position of a person with a mild physical impairment? If that person is under the age of 65, then the additional medical expenses tax credit will be 25% of those expenses incurred and paid, which exceeds 7.5% of a taxpayer's taxable income. Now, why are we talking about the age of 65 or under the age of 65? That is both for a disability and for the impairment. If a person is over the age of 65, then the tax relief for everybody, whether you've got a disability or not, is 33.33%. In other words, a third of your expenses incurred and paid. Right, let's move on. The medical tax credit is a fixed amount that will be offset against tax payable, and it is applicable to a person or his dependent with or without a tax credit. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we once again must draw a distinction between the medical tax credit, which refers to your contributions that you make to a medical scheme or a medical aid, and the additional medical tax credit, which refers to your out-of-pocket expenses, and it refers to your disability expenses. Now, the additional medical tax credit is an additional tax reduction that takes the following into consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, just excuse me. Okay, the additional medical tax credit is an additional tax reduction that takes the following in consideration: the excess of your medical aid contributions, the out-of-pocket medical costs, and your disability expenses. For example, your personal care attendant, your wheelchair, your crutches, etc., etc. Now, the medical tax credit is a rebate that is not refundable, but is used to reduce the person's normal tax. Any portion that is not allowed in the current year will be carried over to the next year of assessment if you are a person living with a disability. Qualifying medical expenses for disability, in addition to the medical tax credit, an individual may claim an additional medical expenses tax credit for certain qualifying medical expenses subject to limitation. And the limitation, ladies and gentlemen, is this, that if we go and look at section 6b, it says that the tax credit will be limited by that amount which is not otherwise recoverable. In other words, let's for example say that I went to the doctor charges 1,000 rand, the medical aid only pays 2,000 rand, then my additional medical expense will be 800 rand. Remember, it is, the law says, not otherwise recoverable. Then the additional medical expenses tax credit depends on a person's age, whether the person, his or her spouse or his or her child has a disability or not. Then the expense must stem from the disability of either the taxpayer or their dependent. Dependents who are neither a spouse nor a child do not qualify. Okay? So if you pay the medical expenses of your grandmother, but you are not responsible for the care and support of your grandmother, then you cannot claim her medical expenses. Individuals with a disability and persons who are over the age of 65 can claim 33 and a third of their medical and disability expenses that they have incurred. Now, then remember, the expense that you claim must be in line with your disability. Let's consider the following example. If a person with a disability who has no visual impairment purchases a handheld global positioning service, a GPS, the cost of the handheld GPS will not qualify for the additional medical expenses tax credit, even though the expense has been incurred and has been prescribed by the commissioner. However, if the person is visually impaired, then the cost of the handheld GPS won't qualify for the additional medical expenses tax credit. So there must be a nexus between that what you claim and your disability. If that nexus aren't there, then obviously then the expense is not claimable. Now, ladies and gentlemen, on the IT or DD, you will find what we call diagnostic criteria for the various disabilities. There we go. Let me quickly show you that. Let me just go back. Physical, communication. There we go. Let me quickly show you that. I'm just going to stop sharing for the moment. And I'm going to share again. And I'm going to the SARS website, www.sars.gov.za. And there we are. Do we all know where to get the ITRDD? Now, to get the ITRDD, ladies and gentlemen, you open the website at the address that I've just given you, www.sars.gov.za. You go to individuals. Come on, there we go. Then we go to tax and disability. There we go. Then we go to, we scroll down. Then you see the confirmation of diagnosis of disability form. Then you can click there, or you can click on the ITRDD. Then we say open. Can we all see that? Then there is the ITRDD form. Now on the ITRDD form, you get various diagnostic criteria. For example, vision, communication, physical, mental. Remember what I explained to you why we use the word mental. Hearing, intellectual, and that is the 5 groups of disability.
Apologies, Kunrad.
Yes.
Can you please display the form? We are not seeing
Can't you
the
see it?
We are seeing the entry to the website. Please display the form as well.
Okay. Let me
Okay.
do this. Now, let me open the form. Sorry about this, ladies and gentlemen. Just want to open the form again. And we say open. And we stop sharing. And then I'll share again. Is that better?
There we
Mr.
go.
Program
Yes,
Director?
we can see the form. Thank you, Kunrad.
Great. Now on the you will see that there's for each group of disabilities, there's the diagnostic criteria for vision. Then we go. Then there's the diagnostic criteria for communication. And there's the diagnostic criteria for an intellectual. So each of those, there is diagnostic criteria. Now, you might wonder and you might say, but but Mr. Commissioner, you're not a doctor. How can you prescribe diagnostic criteria? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are not doctors. Oh, sorry. Let me do this again. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. There is a gremlin in my systems from this morning. Documents.
Ladies and gentlemen, while Kunrad is finding his feet with the gremlins, we're seeing quite a lot of questions coming in through the chat. Thank you very much for that. Just bear note that the questions that that have been posted in the chat, we will have the answers available shortly, hopefully after the session. They will be available on the SARS website. Thank you very much for your questions that you've posted. Gunnar, are you ready?
Yes, I am more or less ready. Let me just find my feet with Zoom. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. I've got a problem. I've got a problem here because I've opened my presentation and it does not seem to appear on the shared tab. There we go. There we go. Yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, I was and I said, but the commissioner, we are not doctors. How can we prescribe criteria? Now, when we designed the ITRDD, we went to various professionals in the field and we said to them, give us criteria for the particular disability. Like, for instance, for vision impairment, we went to we used the international criteria. For communication impairment, we went to the Department of Communication and Augmentative Communication at the Pretoria University. For physical impairment, we went to the National Council for People with Disabilities in South Africa, as they called themselves then. They currently the National Council for Persons with Disability, but we went to them. For mental impairment, we went to the Psychiatric Association of South Africa, and we talked there to psychiatrists and we said, help us. Hearing, we went to the South African Audiology Association. Intellectual, we once again went to the Psychiatric Association of South Africa, and we said to them, help us with impairments. Right. Now, the medical practitioner, dentist, or osteopath, or homeopath, or naturalist, and herbalist. So if I go and see the doctor, I can claim that expense. And nursing home expenses and hospital expenses, I can claim that. Incidentally, guys, nursing home for purposes of disability has been interpreted for a residential care facility for persons with disability. So if the person with a disability resides in a residential care facility, those costs can be taken into account when you complete or when you work out how much your disability expenses was. Then other qualifying medical expenses. The only expenditure prescribed by the Commissioner as qualified under Section 6B can be deducted, but that includes the listed expenses. Expenses must be in consequence of disability. Remember the example that I showed you with the GPS. The expenses will only qualify if it is necessarily incurred. There must be a direct link between the expenditure and the disability. The prescribed expenditure list of qualifying expenditure. Let me quickly go and show you where to get that. Go back to the website and we share. Okay. And then we move down. Then we use that list. And we open it. And let me quickly share that again with you. Stop sharing. There is the list. Just make it a little bit bigger. Right. What is on the list? Aids and other devices, services, continence management products, service animals, alterations and modifications to assets acquired or to be acquired. And importantly, ladies and gentlemen, if a expense is not listed, then it is not claimable. Let me just quickly go to a few interesting things on the list. You will say, but okay, fine. If continence management products are on the list, is incontinence now a disability? No, it is not. Okay. The reason why continence management products are on the list is purely because we recognize that incontinence can be a concomitant to various disabilities. Let's think of paraplegia, let's think of quadriplegia, let's think of spina bifida. Spina bifida, you can use crutches to walk. Very rarely, if that person is able to walk, it is with some degree of difficulty, so it still qualifies as a physical disability. But mostly spina bifida are wheelchair users or they walk with crutches. I don't have to explain quadriplegia, that's spinal cord injury. Some people call it tetraplegia. And the same goes with paraplegia. That is where you are, because of the spinal cord injury, you are paralyzed from the waist down. Okay, so before we go to the ITRDD, remember guys, if we talk about the list, let me just stop sharing, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, I just want to show you a few things on the list. Let's look at school fees, for example. School fees, that includes your cost of your classroom assistant. It will be limited to the excess amount to what you will have paid to the nearest closest public school to where the child resides, and the school, the special school, if I can call it that, your LSEN schools that cater for learners with specific needs. So that takes care of school fees. Traveling expenses, let's quickly just look at traveling expenses. Under traveling expenses, expenses incurred and paid by a taxpayer to acquire qualifying goods or services. So in other words, if I stay in Polokwane, but I have to travel to Pretoria to get my new wheelchair, that traveling expenses will be allowable. Traveling expenses incurred and paid by a taxpayer for the purposes of training as contemplated in section A4. Now that refers to your person who has a vision impairment and have to get a guide dog. Obviously, there is some training involved for the dog and the person with the vision impairment. There is some socializing to do. Then transportation costs specifically incurred and paid in respect of a learner with disabilities. That is now, for example, where in my case, it was like that. My parents stayed in Durban, but I attended school in Kimberley. Now the transportation costs to get me home and to school after the school holidays. Remember, there's a limitation on that. If it's 10 kilometers or nearer, then you cannot claim it. Okay. So that then takes care of the list. Let me quickly share again. Now, the confirmation of disability form must be completed by the taxpayer or the person claiming the benefit, the person who has a disability, or whose spouse or child has a disability. That information must be there. Then, once a taxpayer has completed the ITRDD, okay, then he can benefit from the expense. If a disability is of a permanent nature, okay, and you become a person with disability after 1 March 2019, the ITRDD will be valid for 10 years. If you have become, or if you were the person with disability before 1 March 2019, then the ITRDD will be valid for 5 years. So in other words, every 10 years, ladies and gentlemen, you need to renew your ITRDD. Okay? You don't have to obviously if your ITRDD is valid, we don't need a ITRDD every year. What is important though, if your disability is not of a permanent nature, then obviously it has to be completed every year. There's the ITRDD form. In this block here, the certifying person must write what is the impact of the disability on activities of daily living. Now, before I go to the documentation, remember, ladies and gentlemen, what is important here. We're looking at the tax legislation primarily looks at the disability and the impact of that disability on activities of daily living. We're not looking at diseases. People would come and they would say, you know what, I have asthma or I have diabetes. Therefore, I am entitled to the disability relief in the Income Tax Act. The answer is no. I had a person the other day, just a week ago, which tried to convince me that Crohn's disease is a disability. No, it's not. Okay. But you can claim your medical expenses, you can go and claim your insulin, you can go and claim your syringes, you can go and claim all that. But then obviously it will be limited to 25% of that amount which exceeds 7.5% of your taxable income. Then your ITRDD must be completed or signed by a doctor. Now guys, I had a year or two ago, I had the incident where a person said that he has multiple sclerosis. Now, I'm not questioning the diagnosis of multiple sclerosis per se, but the certifying doctor or the confirming doctor was a gynecologist. Okay. And the person who's trying to claim the expense is a male. And I had two problems. One is the is if we look at multiple sclerosis, it's a neurological condition. Now, how can a gynecologist confirm multiple sclerosis if she's not if the gynecologist is not a a neurologist? Yes, agreed that because of the multiple sclerosis, there is a physical impairment, and if you use a wheelchair, per definition, then you are a person with disability. No problem with that. Problem is that they just used the wrong doctor because diagnosed a gynecologist are not certified. It is not within the scope of practice of a gynecologist to diagnose multiple sclerosis. So I said to the taxpayer, you know what, before we carry on, go and correct your IT or DD. Once you've got the corrected IT or DD, then we can look at your dispute. Right. Then what documentation do you need? Proof of contributions paid to a registered medical scheme or any other fund registered under the similar provisions of other countries. Statement from the medical scheme indicating that the total amount of claims submitted to the fund, okay, and were not refunded to the taxpayer or paid by the scheme. That information you will get on your medical aid certificate. Ladies and gentlemen, a tip from a fool, and I'm a fool. In addition to the medical aid certificate, SARS may request a tax report, which is basically a report of the summary of all the transactions that went through the medical aid. Okay, a completed list of amounts that are submitted or to be recovered from the taxpayer's medical scheme, together with proof of such amounts incurred. Okay, so in other words, remember what we said, that the expense must be incurred and paid during a year of assessment. So in other words, you need to keep all your receipts or proof of payment from the bank to show that you have paid for the expense. A duly completed and signed confirmation of disability form. Now, guys, ladies and gentlemen, we do not want all that documentation when you submit your return. What I normally advise people, and I do it myself as a person with disability, I prepare a schedule. Okay, I can show you my schedule, but then we've got all sorts of Poppy Act issues. But basically, the columns on that schedule is the date that the service was rendered, to whom was the services rendered, was it rendered to myself or to my wife, then the person or pharmacy that the that rendered the service, and the amount. Okay. And while I'm at pharmacies, remember the only deduction that can be allowed is medicines supplied on prescription. Okay. So in other words, over-the-counter medicines you cannot deduct unless it's prescribed. Guys, let me quickly, while I'm at it, talk about vitamins. SARS takes the position that everybody can benefit from vitamins. Okay, so if you go and buy vitamins over the counter or in the pharmacy, then it cannot be claimed. However, if your doctor is of the professional opinion that you can benefit from vitamins to treat one or other medical condition, that is fine, but then he must prescribe it. Okay, it must be on his script. Right. What is the medical fees tax credit for 2026? For a taxpayer, it is 364 Rand per month. For the first dependent, it is also 364 per month. For each additional dependent thereafter, that's 246 Rand per month. Right. In the case where receipts have been made out in the name of the dependent, or the contribution or fees in respect of a dependent have been made out to a different medical aid than the one to which the taxpayer belongs to, then we will accept a sworn affidavit to explain the situation. Right? And that is my story for the day. Thank you very much for listening to me. It is much appreciated.
Thank you, Koenraad, for that highly informative presentation. Your work is a testament of SARS's ongoing commitment to making the compliance process simpler and more accessible. We are now going to hand it over to Phumzile for his presentation. Thank you, Phumzile.
Thank you very much. I just would like to confirm, am I audible? Okay. Thank you very much, colleagues. My name is Phumzile Sondange. I'm just going to share a presentation from a procurement perspective. Colleagues, you can just confirm if you are able to see the slides on my side.
Just put it in presentation mode, Phumzile.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you, sir. There we go.
Colleagues, due to unforeseen circumstances, then I had to step in for a colleague that was not able to be with us today for this particular presentation. And I'll be giving a high-level overview in line with the campaign or the information webinar that we are currently engaging on today. So I think the first point of reference actually is just to introduce myself in terms of who I am and what is my role within SARS, okay, and why this presentation. My name is Phumzile Sondange, coming from Procurement. Within Procurement, representing commercial services. Commercial services serve as support services to procurement holistically, specifically our strategic sourcing division, together with our tactical buying division. So procurement encompasses of a number of divisions or units, okay? Mine specifically being triple BE, which is broad-based Black economic empowerment and transformation, as well as financial risk analysis. I'll highlight later on why all these divisions. We also have got a value delivery planning unit. We also have a governance, risk and compliance unit. We have a contract management unit. We have a SARS sub-support unit. Okay, so it's a coordinated value chain. All these divisions are key. Unfortunately, when we do, or perhaps let's say, let me put it this way, when we do sessions of this nature, we collaborate with these units. However, then I'm the only or sole presenter representing everyone, hence that actually I'll be going high level as to say, what do these all units represent and how they align to what we are presenting today, and what is the future outlook in terms of what we're trying to achieve in line with what we are doing today. Okay. So basically, procurement, we know that is responsible for acquiring goods and services for all SARS division, being it the core business, being it customs, being it enforcement. So our procurement division encompasses of a number of opportunities, that serves the public as a whole, in terms of government doing its business with the public, more or less not exactly the same as our core business, because our core business is more focused on the revenue collection. And us as procurement, we support the core business towards the collection of revenue using all these procurement opportunities in line with the government initiative in terms of transformation, which is broad-based Black economic empowerment. Okay, and then let me just engage actually to highlight what is triple BE within the procurement space and what it stands for and what it wants to achieve. So BE within the procurement space serves the purpose in line with the reconstruction and redevelopment program, which has changed to a national development plan. So it's about redressing imbalances of the past in terms of historically disadvantaged individuals, which includes Africans, Black, Colored, Indians, together with persons with disabilities. So by legislation, we are required, to use these particular opportunities to redress the imbalances of the past. Hence that we have this unit within SARS, which is the triple B unit, which aligns with our strategic objective 9, building public trust and confidence. Because by being triple B compliant and also participate on socio-economic development, then we are sending a message that we're not just about tax revenue or collection, we're also about actually creating opportunities for all South Africans. Okay, so I think highlighting the purpose of triple BE and where it comes from and where it originates, we've got quite a number of stakeholders, which are lawmakers, which we work together. We work together with the Department of Trade Industry, which actually specify the targets in terms of what we need to achieve from a BE perspective. We also work together with the BBB Commissioner, which enforces the compliance amongst all entities within the private sector as well as the public sector. So SARS is a Schedule 3 entity. We are required to comply from an employment equity perspective, from a skills development perspective, from preferential procurement, enterprise and supply development, socio-economic development. Okay. Preferential procurement is the framework that we use actually to advance the opportunities towards historically disadvantaged individuals. So our preferential procurement policy is an external policy that can be found actually on public platforms as well as our website. Okay. And then the next question will be, how do we include persons with disabilities within SARS, in all the opportunities that we have, and what plans do we have for persons with disabilities, and what are those procurement opportunities that I'm really referring to, and what is the plan going forward? It's what that I'll be addressing. Okay. So if you look at the preferential procurement policy, which is the 2022 framework, as the 2017 framework was repealed, we are required to develop BBBE specific goals to advance our initiative in terms of all historically disadvantaged individuals. What are the BBB specific goals? BBB specific goals aligned with the frameworks that I've mentioned, which is originates from the BBB Act, from the DTIC, which is the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition Codes of Good Practice, managed in terms of the BBB Commissioner's Office, and also encompass an element of fairness in line with Section 217 of the Constitution. So us in developing those specific goals as SARS, we are being intentional in terms of what we want to do, and the support that we need to provide out there, in reference to the historically disadvantaged individuals. And those categories actually, or let me say, it's quite a number of categories that we always try to address. I'm not just going to mention persons with disabilities, but I'm going to mention all. We look at the ownership level, and the threshold as required by legislation, which is a minimum of 51% Black ownership. We're looking at ways of how we advance the upliftment of women, by encouraging entities to transform, to have inclusion of at least 30% Black women ownership. We look at youth ownership, which is a challenge within the country, where we want to develop youth by all possible means. And we also look at different categories, people from rural areas, together with persons with disabilities. We've been having a challenge with regards to the inclusion of persons with disabilities, and appreciating what we have seen actually from our tax colleagues, how they navigate, and in terms of what are the benefits for persons with disabilities and how to interact SARS, highlighting all the necessary forms that are applicable, So from our side as well, we have campaigns, that we use actually to engage with persons with disabilities. we've got a section which is enterprise and supplier development, which we use it as a platform to create awareness. We hold annual roadshows, to engage with our stakeholders, with our suppliers. And one of the main challenge, actually, it has been to able us to reach out to the persons or the inclusion of persons with disabilities, because we produce this spend to platforms such as the Parliament. And actually, we would like to see actually us as an organization, having a positive contribution towards such, and having actually sort of a wide campaign to reach out to those categories, so that we can be able to provide the necessary support that is required based on the challenges that we know that are being experienced out there. So, as I've mentioned, that we are very intentional in terms of what we want to achieve and what we do, and also align with the legislation. So basically, we currently also on a campaign where we want to attract almost 50% of the beneficiaries within the funding that we have received, that will be within the category of persons with disabilities, to be able to be included in the mainstream of the economy, to make sure that the support is there for persons with disabilities. So how SARS operates and what are the opportunities that are there? Okay. So as I've mentioned, that we support all division within SARS in terms of goods and services that needs to be procured. And we are divided into two sections, which is tactical buying, strategic sourcing, and not like any other entities, maybe similar to others to some extent. We are more focused on professional services. We are more focused on information, communication, and technology. We are more focused on corporate real estate, which is part of physical facilities. So there's quite a number of opportunities that are there. And we have developed a strategy such as set aside, where inexperienced businesses can be able to thrive. So we've got threshold of 0 to 1 million, where we try to give opportunities to small, medium enterprises. Okay. And then we take them through a structured program, which is an incubation program, in terms of what is the process. Number one, how do we become a supplier within SARS, and how to navigate the opportunities within SARS, and how SARS actually assesses all entities equally and fairly in line with Section 217 of the Constitution. So we are required by legislation to follow the preferential procurement framework and regulations. We've got a supply chain management policy. Hence, that fairness becomes critical and very important in our processes. Hence, all these number of business units that are a value chain in support of all these opportunities. So we've got what we call actually technical requirements for each and every opportunity that we have within SARS. So basically, that's where we assess the capabilities. That's where small entities sometimes will fall short. And then that's where we identify where weaknesses in terms of where we need to assist in terms of supplier development. We also have pricing elements where we know that most organizations are struggling in terms of aligning with the economies of scales in competition with large entities or emerging entities. So basically, we also provide support towards that to ensure that these entities remain compliant within our framework by all possible means. Hence that we have in the preferential procurement an 80-20 principle, where we evaluate price as well as BEE. So basically, BEE weighs about 20 points, while price weighs about 80 points, which is 80% and 20%. So in that, using that sort of framework, we give a distinctive capabilities. We using the 20 points to all historically disadvantaged entities, which includes persons with disabilities. Thereafter, then, SARS actually, in line with Public Finance Management Act, is focused and is always trying to align with the Public Finance Management Act in terms of making sure that we're not trading recklessly or with entities that are trading recklessly. So we've got a framework which assess the financial risk, which we take through all these entities in terms of what is required to remain in financial good standing in order to be able to thrive in some of the opportunities that we have at SARS. Basically, all these opportunities actually are published, in public platforms such as our SARS website, and also every entity that do business with SARS is required to be registered within the central supplier database. Central supplier database is a system actually that was designed actually for all businesses that conduct with that do business with public state or owned entities to make use of, so that we can be able to access the system and reach out to all the entities that we are looking for in terms of doing business. We also do assist entities as to how to get into the CSD, which is the Central Supply Database, how to be a registered, compliant, and approved supplier. Also the documentations that are required, such as your tax clearance certificate, company intellectual property registration, being BBB compliant, declaration of directors, to ensure that there's no conflict of interest or any directors that are employed by government. Okay. So what is our plan actually with regards to the inclusion of these entities? We currently in partnership with the entity called National Empowerment Fund, which administer our enterprise and supplier development program, which we will be reaching out to all the categories that I've just identified earlier on. And one of the mandates is to make sure that we reach out to all entities that are in the category of persons with disability. This campaign actually, I just want to, we're having a session within this month, which include supplier onboarding. And one of the key assessment, actually, it will be suppliers that already have, let's say, registered companies. It will comprise of registered companies. One of those registered companies, the requirement is that it must have at least an ownership by person with disability. So the pool encompasses actually of about 100 suppliers that we're going to incubate, and we're trying actually to get 50% out of that to be part of that particular campaign, where we take them through the process and the training that I talked that I've mentioned earlier on. Our training is robust. Actually, it's going to be a period of 1 year, and it's an ongoing initiative, which is the 1 year started in October, which will end in September 2026. And then we will have another incubation program for the next 3 years, which will be 27, 2028, 2029, with this initiative of, or perhaps let's say, ongoing initiative to develop entities, which will include the category of persons with disabilities, to make sure that they understand how SARS do business, what is the requirement, and take them through the robust training, that is administered by our third-party partner, National Empowerment Fund. And the training will encompass of mentoring, registering and how to register on the CSD, and how to be an approved supplier for SARS, and basically back office support, how to have proper systems in place as a business. We'll take through the aspects of financial management. We'll take them through the aspects of quotation. We'll take them through the aspects of how do we submit quotations for different opportunities to SARS, and then how actually to maintain the BBB compliance. So the training, it is for a period of 1 year. It's very wide in terms of scope, and it's tailor-made to address the challenges that we have and the purpose of the BBBE itself, in terms of ensuring that we have the inclusion of these entities. Basically, that is the high-level overview from the procurement unit in terms of who we are and what BBB stands for. And then basically that will be the conclusion of our presentation in terms of who we are and how aligned we are with the initiative that is at hand today. And I guess then thereafter, we will address then any questions, to provide clarity on certain details that requires clarity, and we'll take it from there. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Phumzile, for your insightful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now reached the portion of the session that is going to be the Q&A, questions and answers. Before I continue reading the questions which our behind-the-scenes team have highlighted and sent to me, I would also like to introduce an additional member onto our panel, Mark Rogers. He is from the tax-based broadening unit in the Eastern Cape. I will be facilitating the Q&A sessions. We'll be reading the questions as we have received them. They have been highlighted by our IT team. Right. Gentlemen, as we continue with the questions and answers, will you please remember to switch on your cameras? Kunrat, Phumzile, will you please switch on your cameras? Thank you, Kunrat. Phumzile.
We'll do that shortly.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as I've explained, I am going to facilitate the Q&A session, reading the questions as we have received them, as they have been highlighted and sent to me by the team that works behind the scenes. Right, so the question one that we have here, for individuals living with a chronic or rare diseases who sometimes receive small financial donations or support from local or international charities, how should these be declared for tax purposes, and do any exemptions apply for such patient support? I would like to direct this question to Mark.
Thank you, Program Director. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Just to answer on that question, yes, you can declare the donations as income, but it will be exempted from income tax purposes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for your answer. The second question that we have highlighted here is the following. Are there any medical expenses, deductions or rebates available for patients who have a significant out-of-pocket healthcare cost not covered by the medical aids, such as wound care supplies, medical equipment, and or travel or treatment centers? Kunrat, will you please answer this one?
As I've indicated in my presentation, that if you have out-of-pocket medical expenses, that can be claimed. Okay, Now, that would include wound care products. However, we must also bear in mind that wound care is a medical special, let me rather put it this way, is a nursing specialty on its own. So therefore, if you use a wound care sister, okay, then the expense of that sister will be deductible, and obviously the products that she uses. Thank you.
Thank you, Kunrad. Umzile, I would like to direct the following question to you. It states here, what documents are mandatory for SARS tenders?
Okay. In response to that question, in terms of the documents that are standard and mandatory for such tenders, so it is a must for all entities to be tax compliant. So basically, a tax clearance certificate serves as a supporting document to assess that. We've got SPD documents for all different types of declaration. From the BE perspective, we have an SPD 6.1, which actually is where the entity declares the ownership details and the qualification of the specific goals, which includes the category that I've mentioned earlier on, in terms of being a Black-owned, Black women-owned, owned by persons from rural areas and persons with disability. And we used it for the allocation of points. A BE certificate is also a requirement. However, it's not a disqualifying factor, but it's something that we use to work with the entities, to comply once they are awarded the contract. Okay, so also 3-year annual financial statements for existing entities is also a requirement. But however, for newly established entities, we understand that there won't be any financial statements actually available. Therefore, it will be a letter stating that the entity is has just been newly formed, and we will look at the letter and look if there's any financial information available to assess the entity from that perspective. Those are the requirements with regards to the mandatory documents or necessary documents required actually to do business with SARS. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Mark, I would like to redirect the following question to you for an answer. If a patient serves as a volunteer or part-time contractor for a patient organization, for example, receiving a small regular payment or a one-time payment, how should this income be reported to SARS? And are there thresholds or specific forms we should be aware of?
Okay, thank you for the question once again. With regards to the forms, there's not any specific forms that you need to complete, but you have to declare that income on your income tax return. And with regards to your tax thresholds, your normal thresholds for income tax purposes will be applied, which is 95,750 per annum. If you break it down into monthly, you're looking at an amount of 7,979 Rand per month. So if you exceed those thresholds, obviously that income will become taxable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Kunrad, I would also like to redirect the following question to you. I was wondering why they don't accept GP saying that you are disabled. I've had to redo the forms and ask my physio and a therapist to complete the forms. Kunrad?
Look, if we look at the ITRDD, the ITRDD specifies that a physio can confirm or a physical disability. Okay. In terms of the GP, we have always maintained as SARS that a GP can confirm a disability, but then the GP must do so on the strength of a report from a specialist. So that is the position. The GP can, but then there must be a report. The ITRDD prescribes a physiotherapist.
Thank you. Thanks, Gunnar. I do have a question here. I think, Bumzile, we've touched on it previously, but let me give you the opportunity to answer the question. What happens if a bidder does not submit a BBEE documents? Bumzile?
Okay. When a person does not submit a BBEE supporting documents as required, as we have mentioned earlier, that is not a disqualifying factor. We try to work with all entities to support accordingly. So an entity will still be appointed, or perhaps go through the stage of evaluation, even if they don't produce such document. But however, it also serves as a disadvantage towards an entity, as I've mentioned, that the document serves as proof to claim the BBEE points, which provide a distinctive capability for the entity. So if that document then is not provided, it means that an entity, instead of scoring 20 points, will score 0. And then there are chances that they may not be awarded a contract from a SARS perspective. But however, should an entity perhaps be competitive in terms of pricing, and go through without supporting such document, we do engage and assist by all possible means in terms of making sure that they align with SARS BBEE objectives in terms of BBEE. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mzile. Mark, will you take the following question, please? I'd like some clarity on what documentation we need to keep as a record of medication/treatments that we have paid out of our pocket for medical aid credit, to receive the medical aid credits. Mark?
Thank you. To answer that question, a detailed schedule will suffice. Detailed schedule of all expenses incurred for that specific tax year, and accompany that with all the invoices or the payments or proof of payments that you've made for those medical expenses. So yes, a schedule with all expenses as well as proof of payment. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Will you also please take the following question? It reads as follows. Why do they make it so difficult to get our disability registered? I've spoken to about 12 people during last year, and none of them was able to help me to get my disability status active. I have completed the documents and need just to load them onto my profile so that it will reflect that I have a disability. Onto this question, there's, I guess it's the second part. Isn't there a way to upload online instead of waiting hours at a call center queue, and they are not even able to assist you? Mark?
Thank you once again. To answer that question, you don't have to register disability with SARS. You will be completing the ITRDD form, but with regards to answer the question there, you don't have to register the status as such, but you have to indicate it on your return every year when you complete your income tax return, which is the ITR 12. where there is a portion on return where you have to indicate if you have a disability or not. To answer that question, so you have to indicate that to SARS on your return every year when you submit your return, if you do qualify for disability. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mark. The second portion of the question, let's just reread that one where it's asking, is there a way to upload online instead of waiting hours in a call center queue? Can you just touch on that, please, Mark?
Yes, thank you. So SARS will indicate by means of communication to you if any supporting documents are required. That you can either do through our platforms on e-filing or through our SARS online query system, with obviously a case number that will be allocated to that, and you'll be able to upload your supporting documents to SARS without having to wait in a long queue or on our call center.
Thanks, Mark. Pumzile, here is a question for you. Does SARS monitor BBEE compliance during contract execution?
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, we definitely do monitor BBEE compliance through the entire duration of the contract. We monitor and report on it on a monthly basis, and we are being audited as well by the independent triple verification agency on an annual basis to ensure that all service providers that we conduct business with are BBEE compliant. So we do have a system in place that monitors the compliance of all service providers, and which it is the system that we use as well to underscore the non-compliance gaps and engage the service providers accordingly and develop them accordingly in terms of compliance. Thanks.
Thank you, Pumzile. Kunrad, I would like to redirect the question that I'm reading now to you. When a third party is involved in covering medication, thus it is not covered out of my own pocket, how do I indicate it? Now it states here, thus the medical expenses is paid on behalf of another person. Kunrad?
Mr. Program Director, just allow me, before I answer the question, to comment on the answer given by my colleague. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, when you complete the return, you will indicate that you are a person with disability. Okay. You would attach your schedule as my colleague has indicated, and as I referred to in my presentation. Should the matter then be allocated for audit, okay, then you would upload all your proof of payment and you would upload your ITRDD. The ITRDD then serves to show that you've correctly completed your return by indicating that you are a person with disability. Then coming to the question asked, remember, guys, ladies and gentlemen, what we have said. We have said that you can only claim expenses which is not recoverable in any other source. Okay, so that then means that if somebody else pays for your expenses, that then you cannot claim it in your own hands as a taxpayer. Okay, and that brings me to another quick point. Remember, to be eligible for the tax credit, you need to be a taxpayer. In other words, You need to have a salary from which tax is deducted every month, or you need to receive business income from which taxes are deducted, either by way of pay as you earn or by way of provisional tax. The point is, you need to pay taxes to be eligible for the tax relief or the tax credits.
Thank you very much, Kunrat. We have one question left here, which Kunrat, I would also like for you to answer. The question reads as follows: can a deaf blind parents claim tax rebates for certain items? And if so, do the parents know that they can claim? Also give some examples of an item.
Yes, there is items that a deaf blind parent or person can claim. Like for instance, if they use a guide dog, okay, you can claim the expenses for the upkeep of that dog, the food, the veterinary costs, etc. It is very difficult to be more specific on this because obviously your expenses must be listed and you must have a need for those expenses. And without sitting down with the person and determining what is the need and what is what is in the list, it's very difficult to give a comprehensive explanation as to what can be claimed or not.
Thank you very much, Kunrat. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of myself, our panel, Kunrat, Umzile, and Mark, we thank you for your questions that you have posted. Be assured that if your questions have not been answered today here online, please look out for the comprehensive FAQ document that we will be publishing on the SARS website. Those will contain the answers to your questions that you have posted, especially those that are within the chat that we have seen here. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that said, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to you, our audience, for your time and your active participation. I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to all our external guests, the South African Disability Alliance, Down Syndrome South Africa, as well as the affiliated organizations, our panelists, organizers, the IT team that's been running up and down here behind the scenes. Please remember that all the slides will be available on the SARS website, right? As well as the full recording of the webinar can be accessed on our SARS YouTube channel. Please do not forget to follow us on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Just a reminder, as you leave the webinar, you will be redirected to a short survey. Please do participate in the survey and complete the questions on the survey. So on that note, I would like to wish you a wonderful day. Thank you, God bless, and goodbye.
Your tax matters.